And again, kamikaze stands for divine wind, right? Talked about that earlier. Yeah, and I mean, the Japanese pilots would go through, you know, the ceremonies and so forth, their prayers and everything. They all knew what they were doing. They were going to fly their planes into ships and kill themselves. Yeah.
So they have honor as like a big thing.
Huge thing.
Is all of this for honor?
Yes. Yeah.
Like even the like all the stuff they do against the United States.
Yes. Yeah. And there's no honor, and that's one of the things that.
Because it seems very contradictory to honor a lot of it.
So like, well, it's just what they teach you. You know what I mean? So if you're, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but. So that's one of the reasons why you see such mistreatment of American prisoners of war. The Japanese thought it was dishonorable to surrender. You know what I mean? And so when they captured our POWs, they were like, these guys are, you know, they're dishonorable human beings, and they have a right to mistreat you because you surrender. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, that mindset is really warped. You know, it's really crazy too, because I mean, when you look at the Japanese culture today, you know what I mean? They're one of the most, you know, pacifist type, you know, just the way they greet one another, the way, you know, it's very standoffish and not, you know, confrontational at all. You know what I mean? So, it's insane what we had to go through in the Pacific, and so I mean that's really a point I try and drive home. And I'll mention the film again. You know, HBO did Band of Brothers for following the 101st Airborne, but the video series called The Pacific that HBO did. Takes you through a bunch of the different islands and so forth, and explains what was going on there. And it's very graphic, very difficult to watch. And so, all right, so we were going to retake the Philippines. I talked about that the other day. Right? And so now we'll just kind of move on to this, the development of the atomic bomb. Okay. So Truman takes office in April 45. Okay, it's really a few days after he's sworn in where they tell Truman, hey, we're working on this weapon. Truman didn't even know about the Manhattan Project as vice president. Obviously, this was very top secret. Now, Stalin, we know, he knew about it, okay, but the vice president did. Now, the word atom in Greek means unbreakable, so it had always thought that it was the smallest, you know, the smallest particle in the universe, I guess. And obviously, it's not. Okay, we've gone subatomic, right? Einstein, who obviously was a German Jew and a scientist here. Why are they sending those out? Okay. Anna, you're not going to be here Friday, so you're not here today. Yeah, so they proposed it possible. Did I talk about the letter that Einstein wrote back in the back of the room? In the back of the room here, you got a letter addressed from Albert Einstein to President Roosevelt. Okay, it's dated August 2nd, 1939. And this is a warning that German scientists believe that it's possible to split the atom and create a weapon from it. Okay? Now, have you guys heard of Enrico Fermi, speaking of physicists or physics AP exams? Did you guys talk about Enrico Fermi? Okay. He was the first to split the atom. He did so at the University of Chicago, okay, underground, in a lab underneath the football field, okay. Now, when you split the atom. It's called fission, right? Okay, and you create a chain reaction with that. Okay, and so obviously they figured out using uranium, specific type of uranium, 235. Okay, that you can create a violent chain reaction. Yes, and so they put together the top scientists, mathematicians, physicists in the United States. Now, a lot of these gentlemen are from around the world, okay? So you have people that are maybe not born in the United States, but now living in the United States. The guy that will oversee the Manhattan Project scientist would be J. Robert Oppenheimer, okay? And you want to talk about dealing with egos. You know, you got some of the smartest guys in the world here in the room together, working together. Somebody's got to manage those egos. Okay, and that was Oppenheimer. So there was about a $2 billion investment, which is a massive amount of money. They did this outside of Los Alamos, New Mexico, in the desert. Okay, there were Manhattan Project locations outside of Los Alamos. I mean, in different parts of the country that were working on different things. Okay, but the main part of it was out in the desert. Yeah.
I did my project, or my MHD project over the Manhattan Project.
Cool.
The letter from Einstein, it was commissioned by a physicist named Leo Szilard.
Okay.
But he believed that he didn't have the star power to convince FDR.
Awesome.
So then he got Einstein to write it for him.
Sweet. Cool. Who was that guy?
He was a physicist.
Okay.
Leo Szilard.
Okay. My wife's a chemical engineer, right? She went to Virginia Tech, and she went there. She's older than I am. So she was at Virginia Tech in the 80s, in the mid 80s, okay? And one of her professors had worked on the Manhattan Project, okay? One of her chemistry people, okay? Which is pretty crazy. So you ever wonder why in the military, it costs, $150 to buy a toilet seat, or each nut and bolt and stuff like that is really expensive. This is where they hide money, in different things to do, because you can't put in a bill, what you're spending this money on if it's secret. You know what I mean? So they allocated this money and brought these scientists together, and by July 16th of 1945, they detonated the first bomb, which was codenamed Trinity. Okay, and this is kind of a time-lapse photographs of that first atomic bomb. Okay, anything to add on that? They had people out there to observe it. They dug trenches. Our soldiers were nearby, and the flash of light, brighter than the sun. Yeah.
Sometimes scientists thought that it was literally the end of the world because they thought that the atomic bomb had the potential to light our atmosphere on fire. So when they dropped it the first time, that's actually what certain scientists thought had happened because the explosion was so big. So everyone was actually like freaking out, being like, "Oh my God, we just ended the world."
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. Because you get this chain reaction, what other chain reactions are going to take place, and so forth. Well, it was successful. Now, Truman, when this bomb is detonated, is at a conference with Churchill and Stalin at the Potsdam conference. Okay, yeah.
Because they figured nothing's going to survive that anyways.
Okay. So, like I said, at the Potsdam conference, some crazy stuff happens. First, Truman gets word the test has worked. And so he's energized. He's like, okay, we're going to win this. We're going to use this, you know what I mean? And we're going to win. Also at the Potsdam conference, this is after VE Day. Churchill loses in parliamentary elections, and he is told he has to go back home, and he's going to be replaced by Clement Attlee, who's his replacement, which is really embarrassing for Churchill. Okay, I mean, he just led Britain through the war, and then they say thanks, see you later.
Is there a reason?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Now later on he would be elected as prime minister again. Okay, Truman actually feels pretty sorry for Churchill about this. He invites him over to the States, brings him to Missouri and stuff like that, and hopefully we'll get time to talk about it. But Churchill will give a very important speech at Fulton College, Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. This is the Iron Curtain speech that he gives at their commencement address. And so it becomes one of the most important speeches of the second half of the 20th century. I mean, it's given in the first half, but for the second half, yeah.
How old is Churchill at this point?
I think he's in his 60s. He looks older than that, but he's in his 60s. Yeah. He doesn't take care of his body too well. So we warned the Japanese. Now, guys, something to understand here. By this time, we have been bombing Japanese cities with B-29s. Okay, now originally with the B-29, which is the only pressurized aircraft of World War II, so you can fly it at 30,000 feet in shorts and a T-shirt, right? But the trade winds over Japan are so fast. So, like, if you're flying into the wind in a B-29, you can almost stall out. And if you're going with the wind, you're moving too fast to hit your targets. I mean, it's very high winds. So they scrapped the high-level bombing and started bombing at 10,000 feet. And so it was a daily occurrence that you would see B-29s flying over Japan, dropping bombs on cities like Tokyo, Kobe, other major cities with firebombs. We're using incendiaries here. And what we're trying to do, guys, is get the Japanese to surrender before we have to invade. And just like we tried with Germany, you know what I mean? And this is an honest statistic, guys. We will kill more Japanese with regular, incendiary bombs than we will with the atomic bombs. Okay, when we use the atomic bombs, we're going to bomb industrial cities. We're not going for population. Okay, we're not, and guys, we warned. We've dropped flyers. We dropped, hey, leave the cities. Get out of the cities. Warn the Japanese people that we're going to bomb these cities. Get out. Okay, and so on August 6th, the Enola Gay, which was the name of the B-29, named after the pilot's mother, the pilot was a guy named Tibbets. The bomber will leave Tinian Island carrying the first atomic bomb, which is known as Little Boy. If I can get my mouse over here. Okay. Yeah, so this is Little Boy. That's what the bomb looks like there. It's quite large. And it is a uranium bomb, okay? And then 3 days later, after the Japanese do not surrender, the second bomb, which is a plutonium bomb, which from what I understand is a man-made substance from uranium.
I wouldn't say man-made. It's another element, but it's
Plutonium is one of the elements?
yeah.
Okay.
But it can be created through fission. But anything can be created through fission.
Okay.
It's just like the sun creates elements.
Mm-hmm.
It's fission creates more simple things.
But it doesn't tend to come up like in reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot harder to do it than it is with fusion.
Okay. All right. Well, so this bomb drops on Nagasaki. Now, the original target was not Nagasaki on the 9th. Cloud cover, I don't know the names of the two cities, but this was actually the third target that day. Cloud cover had, prevented them from dropping the bomb over the first two cities. So the third city was Nagasaki, and the clouds did part so that they could drop the second bomb. This is like one of those Weather Channel did a thing on how weather changed history. Okay, so I mean, really, if there wasn't cloud covered, it wouldn't have been Nagasaki. You know what I mean? So weather changing history. And then I've also read a story about a guy that survived the first bomb in Hiroshima and fled the city like people did. They got out of there after the bomb and went to Nagasaki and survived the second one. Okay. Now, a lot of people didn't survive it. Okay. So I'll give you some numbers here in just a second. And then this is the Japanese delegation, September 2nd, 1945, and they are going to surrender on USS Missouri, okay, which is a big battleship. All right. Have you guys seen the movie Battleship?
Not the one with aliens.
Yeah, the one with aliens. It's a fantastic movie. I mean, it's sci-fi stuff, but at the end of the movie, they're in Hawaii, and the Missouri's still there. It's a museum, and they get all these old guys that work, as like tour guides on the U.S. Missouri to like recommission it and kill these aliens. It's pretty cool. They pull some sweet maneuvers and stuff like that. I mean, it's all just, but it's a cool movie. That's the USS Missouri. It's a massive battleship. Okay. And then this picture is taken there as well. This is Admiral Nimitz, okay, of the Pacific Fleet. And you got General MacArthur here, okay, signing the surrender terms by the Japanese. I just put a couple pictures together here. This is we use cruise ship to bring our troops back home. So you can see they're packed in like sardines coming back from Europe. All right. And then this is after the massive ticker tape parade in New York City after the victory celebration. Yeah.
Did MacArthur and Patton ever meet?
I'm sure they knew each other, but I mean, not during the war. I don't think they ever like had a chance to like brainstorm together or anything like that. Now, a lot of people wanted MacArthur to run for president when he got back. I told you about what happened to Patton, right?
Yeah.
He died in a car accident.
Oh, no.
Okay, so listen, guys. Patton with the Soviets, okay, when we got to the Elbe River and the war was over, essentially in Europe, Patton's still in country. And, they're trying to figure out how to divide this country up and so forth. The Soviets are going to get the eastern part, and we're going to use Britain, France, and U.S. are going to control parts of Austria and Germany. Okay, they split it all up. Berlin is split up into 4 sectors as well, the capital. And Patton's like, the communists are already like going back on their promises. You know what I mean? And Patton says this in a speech, and he starts criticizing people, or the Soviet Union. He starts like going after them. He's like, give me 60 million gallons of gasoline, and I'll take care of the communist bastards right now. Patton was like, he didn't like communists. A lot of Americans didn't like communists. You know what I mean? And so he's like, let's just take care of them. They're not keeping their promises, and so forth. 3 days later, he's dead. Now, in Bill O'Reilly's book, Killing Patton, there is a conspiracy theory that the director of the OSS, the CIA, Wild Bill Donovan, was working with the Soviets for the post-war world, what it was going to look like. And Patton stood in the way of that and was causing problems. And basically, Patton, the car he was in, was hit by an American military truck, like one troop carrier truck. And it's a little bit suspicious how that all went down. Okay. So I don't know whether to believe any of that, but Patton's going to die. Okay. He survives all that. He survives North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and then he dies in a car accident. Okay. So let me just preview real quick some of the details of the bombs and the impact of the bombs.
I looked it up. Plutonium is not generally naturally occurring while it's
Okay.
possible. It's usually a byproduct of nuclear energy. So that's probably why the first bomb was made out of Gadget. Because the bomb was called Gadget, but the testing was called Trinity.
Okay.
And it was a plutonium bomb. So they probably just used excess, like the stuff they had lying around from nuclear energy.
Right. And from what I understand, we did not have a third bomb.
Yeah.
At the time, we only had two.
So
So,
the third one in development.
yeah. So let me read to you this. This is from that Time Life book. I'll just start here. In an effort to calculate the dimensions of the bomb's power, a group of Japanese scientists probed through the ruins for the days afterward. They discovered that air burst had produced pressures that matched the sustained thrust of a tidal wave, knocking down all of the strongest buildings of concrete and steel. Heat measured thousands of degrees Fahrenheit and traveling at the speed of light had set fire to wooden structures that were more than a mile from ground zero. The hypocenter, which each a mile from the hypocenter, at twice the distance, infrared rays had charred telephone poles and burned human skin. In Hiroshima, the thermal wave swept out over the city, setting alight homes in its path. Into a vacuum created by its passing, roared hurricane-like winds, fanning a firestorm that raged for hours. In all, 62,000 of the 90,000 buildings in Hiroshima were destroyed. In Nagasaki, the hills separating the industrial quarter from the rest of the city blocked the thermal wave. No firestorm followed. Even so, the wave of heat instantly ignited wooden buildings within 2 miles of the hypocenter, and 11,500 of the city's 52,000 residents burned to the ground. Exactly how many people died in Hiroshima as a direct result of the atomic bomb has never been determined with strict accuracy. Initial figures placed the dead at 68,600 and wounded at 72,800. Later estimates raised the death toll in Hiroshima to 140,000. At Nagasaki, the plutonium bomb proved to be a reaper not so lethal as its Hiroshima predecessor. 37,507 dead, 26,700 wounded. By December, the death count was raised to 70,000. But the horror of the bombs extended well beyond the casualty list of the times. In the years and even decades that followed the appearance of the mushroom clouds, latent radiation chose new victims at random with little warning. Indeed, for a time, there was a rumor that the Americans had seeded their devilish bombs with poisonous gas. As hundreds of seemingly healthy people became ill and died with symptoms of radiation sickness, or from illnesses thought to be spawned by radiation. Of the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki came to realize that none among them could be absolutely sure of having escaped the wrath of the nuclear explosions. This was the list to the list of terrors introduced by the atomic bomb was added another, the terror of the unknown. Okay, now the flash of light was so bright that it actually burned shadows into the sides of buildings, which is crazy. You know what I mean? So this, we come down to this debate at the end, was this the right thing to do? Okay, and if you study this, and we'll end with a little more video, I won't record that, but the estimates of how many troops it was going to take to invade Japan, they were thinking upwards of more than 1 million men for the invasion, and casualty rates as high as 250,000 Americans dying and so forth. So Truman is faced with this decision to use this weapon or not. and he thinks it will end the war. Now, one of the sticking points for the Japanese was the emperor. Remember, the emperor is seen as, a descendant of the sun god. So we want him removed. We want it gone. Okay? And the Japanese just are not willing to budge on that. So in the end, even after the 2 atomic bombs, now there's a lot of infighting going on. There's a lot of pressure on the emperor to surrender. And there are many among him that do not want him to surrender. Okay? And so in the end, Truman is going to capitulate. We're going to allow the emperor to stay, but he will become a head of state, not the guy in charge. You know what I mean? But he's going to become like the Queen of England. He's going to be stripped of his authority. He'll still be an important person to the Japanese people, but he will not have authority over the government. Okay? Because we're going to write that constitution for them. Okay? Because it's unconditional, other than allowing the emperor to stay. Okay? So eventually they worked out the terms. There's a pretty good movie that came out. Boy, I wish I could remember the name. And it's about the last days. And MacArthur actually goes and meets with the emperor. They did not want him to. Yeah. The Japanese, because you just don't go meet the emperor. And there was a soldier that was with MacArthur that was really good about, diplomatically with the Japanese. And eventually he got in to see the emperor. They sat down and had a conversation, him and MacArthur. It was very cordial, and it went well. And from there, the United States is going to occupy Japan for the next 5 years. We will have occupation forces in, and basically MacArthur will govern Japan for 5 years. Okay, we will rewrite their constitution for them, where they spend no more than 0.5% on their military. So basically, the United States will become the protector of Japan. We will defend Japan. Okay, and so that relationship that we have with Japan today is a very good one. And they're a very close trading ally, military ally, and so forth. Okay. So I think if you look back, in the end, it's certainly worked out well for Japan. In the end, it's worked out well for us. Did a lot of innocent people die? Absolutely. How many of Americans would have died had we had to invade the island? Huh?
Well, estimates were already 250,000.
Or even higher. Now, we don't know. You know what I mean? And we don't know how the Japanese population would have behaved. If they did what they were doing on the island of Saipan and started killing themselves, holy cow. I don't know. I don't know what they would have done. Nobody really knows. So, in the end, there's going to be a question on the test. It's the easiest question to have all year, because there's no right answer. The only right answer is yes or no. And why? You can't say maybe. You can't say yes and no. You have to get off the fence. It's an opinion question. Okay? So we will wrap up section 20, module 20B there. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit. I've got one more video in here that I can show you before we're done. Okay? As far as the test goes, I know we got AP stuff going on. I'm looking at Tuesday. So I don't know if you guys come in Wednesday or come in during mass period at some point and take it. Okay? So I'll do a review day on Monday.